I'm Linda Egnatz, and I'm the Executive Director of the Global Seal of Biliteracy. Welcome to Global C.R.E.D, and welcome to this session, Game Changer, How to Grow Your Business with the Global Seal of Biliteracy. Really excited to present this opportunity to you, which might be completely new, but I hope will be exciting. So first of all, I'd like to just introduce myself. Who am I? Well, I spent more than 40 years as a high school and college Spanish educator. And in that time, I became very interested in something called the Seal of Biliteracy. It began as a state seal of biliteracy in 2011 in the state of California. I live in the state of Illinois, where in 2012, I began to start advocating for the seal here. What it is really a certification of language skills, of 2 language skills, or being bilingual. And I've ever since been an advocate because I believe in the importance of being bilingual. As a result, maybe, of that effort, in 2013, I received the Golden Apple Teacher of Excellence Award. And 2014, I was named the ACTFL National Language Teacher of the Year for that year, and currently serve on the Joint National Committee for Languages Board of Advisors members. So all of that to say, I like languages and I'm kind of a language geek. But most importantly, it centers around my belief and passion for 2 things: that language learners deserve to be recognized and that they have the opportunity to level up their language and to leverage it for the future. So that's really what I'm about. And so let's talk about the Seal of Biliteracy and what it is. It's ultimately a recognition that's awarded to certified language skills in 2 or more languages. As a language educator, I get tired of students that just showed up to my class for seat type. Oftentimes, you would hear, I took 2 years of language and I don't remember a thing. It's because language oftentimes was something someone took in school just to get a prerequisite for college entrance requirements met. They weren't taking the language to learn it. They were taking it to meet a college checkoff requirement. And so for me, the Seal of Biliteracy was really a game changer. In fact, what that meant was that now they were in the class for the long haul. They were in the class to actually get something that was language related out of it. And what that was a Seal of Biliteracy that required a test at the end that meant they had to also learn the language. And I saw it as a game changer. In fact, in 2014, I wrote this article for Education Week that was called that. And here we are several years later, and I believe it even more strongly today. In fact, I believe it so strongly that in 2018, I left the classroom to lead the Global Seal of Biliteracy to expand the program to not just high school students, but to university students, adults, and anyone globally who wants to credential their language skills for the workplace or for academic purposes, or just to prove they've learned something to themselves. And so what does the Seal of Biliteracy represent? It really is proof. It's documentation of your language skill in 2 languages. And that level is determined by testing. And it's based on something called the ACTFL Proficiency Scale. And the ACTFL Proficiency Scale starts at novice low. It's the beginner level. Then it moves into the intermediate, to the advanced, to the superior, and to the distinguished, which I would still aspire to in the languages that I've learned. In the United States, one of those languages that you need to know must be English to be certified. That could be your first language or your second language. The only exception is in Hawaii, because Hawaii actually has 2 official languages. When we talk about the Seal of Biliteracy, it's more than just being bilingual, which means I can converse in 2 languages. I can speak and I can listen. But literacy has to do with reading and writing. And so being biliterate means that I also have speaking, listening, reading, and writing skills. Someone who is multiliterate would be able to do that in more than 2 languages. The seals of biliteracy then are a way to use sort of gamification to engage learners. It becomes your, kind of an opportunity to sort of level up, to continue to improve. Because as I'm learning the language, I can take autonomy over my language learning. So as an adult, oftentimes someone will decide they want to learn a language, maybe because they're going to take a trip or they see it as a job enhancement. When I taught at Purdue University, I oftentimes had individuals in certain areas of the workforce who took my courses not because they were studying for any kind of a degree program, but because they needed it for their job, especially in the medical field, in banking, and in business, in law enforcement. Those are really common areas where language was going to be a plus, and oftentimes a pay differential as well. A paradigm shift then is when language coursework is not to meet a requirement, but really to achieve proficiency. In fact, we've seen that in the last year with the whole COVID experience. And it was where a lot of people were at home, and language learning was one of the top 5 things people decided that they wanted to do. But it's not, and the other big paradigm shift is that language learning doesn't, and the seal doesn't have to be a trophy, but it can be a tool. It is a micro credential. It documents an actual skill, like a plumbing certificate or license, because you can use it for future opportunities. It also has tiered certifications. It's an opportunity to provide some benchmark testing as you improve. Because there are those different levels along that ACTFL scale, I can easily see and measure my improvement as I take tests and along the way. And that gives me feedback each time I do that, so I can improve and know where my weaknesses are, but also I can celebrate my strengths. Lastly, it is a huge benefit to academic programs and to employers, because by providing language credentials, you have an opportunity to identify individuals within your organizations that can benefit you, your markets, your customers, or your clients, and potentially open up new markets, as well as honor those individuals that you have in some really unique ways. Building on sort of a diverse community that I think is really exciting. So let's talk about the Global Seal and some game basics. First of all, an individual can play as an individual. In other words, anyone can apply to the Global Seal as an individual and take a test that way. They can also apply as a group. So we sometimes have an organization, a bank, a school, some other entity apply on behalf of people in their group. There are no age or geographic limits to Global Seal recipients. And all they need to apply or to certify are skills that meet our criteria in 2 or more languages. So where can you play? Anywhere. You can test at work, you can test it in a school setting, you can test at home through online tests with proctors. So there's consistent international rules wherever you go, but it's very accessible, and that's one of our pillars of beliefs here at Global Seal. Third is that, and finally, is that we have these 3 tiers of play. We have 3 different levels of certification: functional fluency, working fluency, and professional fluency. And so we'll look at what those are here. And so we see that those experiences that we have will continue to grow our skills. So when you get to the level of that functional fluency, which means that you can get by in the language, it might not be pretty, you're going to make a lot of mistakes, but you could be understood, you could get your message across, you'll be able to order in a restaurant, you'll be able to help someone find the office and the x-ray that they need to get to. You'll be able to make a sale but you'll be able to get by. Or the advanced low, which is our working fluency, which means you'll be able to do lots of different kinds of things in the language, or you can be quite highly fluent and proficient and be able to seamlessly do whatever it is that you need to get done in the language. And it's possible to earn all three because language learning is a journey, and we want you to continue to do it over the long haul. And so we thought we'd be interesting to show you that, it's not an all or nothing proposition. You don't have to wait till you know everything to use your language in the workforce. This chart comes from actful.org called Oral Proficiency Levels in the Workplace. And it starts out here at the very low level, that little novice area. There's that middle column talks about corresponding positions or jobs or professions. There aren't any at that level because that level does not have independence in the language. And so we start really at that intermediate mid where we have that sort of independence. That's why we call that functional fluency. You can get by. And these are things where you can interact in a situation that's predictable, that's repetitive. You do the same thing pretty much every day. There's nothing too unexpected. So a sales clerk, a cashier, a receptionist, you help people fill out the same form every day, so you know what the same questions are going to be, and so on. Our next level is our working fluency at advanced low. This is actually the level at which someone would be certified to be a K through 12 language teacher. You might be a social worker, a nurse. You could work in retail sales or customer service, a secretary. These are people who can handle fairly regular tasks and problems and situations in the language. Nothing real, very technical, but they can certainly solve problems and so on. And then we get into our advanced high, our professional fluency, where we're talking with very academic language, very professional language, and technical language that's much more that might be important, and where the nuance could be very critical. And any of these have valid uses. And so we would encourage you to begin using your language for real purposes as soon as you can. When you get a Global Seal of Biliteracy at any of the three levels, it is serial numbered. It is unique to you, and it includes not just your name and your languages and the date, but it also includes a serial number that can be entered in under licenses and certifications on your LinkedIn profile, on a CV or resume. It can be transcribed directly to an employer or to an academic institution as well. And these kinds of documents can qualify you for pay differentials, for bilingual pay or foreign language proficiency pay. If as an employer if this is a market that you want to expand into, this is a way that you might do that by attracting foreign language professionals, is by offering incentives in this particular way. In some areas, they're already there. For example, oftentimes in government service jobs or in jobs that are much more competitive. For example, in nursing, this is from ZipRecruiter, the average nurse across the country, $70,000 salary. The American Nursing Association says that the average national pay differential is about 7%. But according to ZipRecruiter, for a bilingual nurse, it was about $85,000, which was much more than 7%. So in this case, being bilingual really at the working fluency level really does pay off. For U.S. employers in business, it's important for you to think about how having bilingual employees could help you expand to new markets. This is from the 2017 census. And if you find your state, mine in the state of Illinois, where 23.5%, almost 1/4 of my state, has another language that's spoken at home, that actually represents for me a market that I might be able to target my products or services to. In the state of Illinois, for example, the third language after English and Spanish is Polish. And we see nationally the fifth largest language for kindergartners right now is Vietnamese. So we start to think about this kind of information as being informative to me as a business owner as to what might be useful in my particular area in terms of services and clients and things that I might want to provide. So how do these pieces work together? Linguistic assets might be those people who I have in my employ or who I might want to hire who have language skills. Economic assets might be, what is it that is in my state or in my region that might be connected to or valuable to language. Educational assets. What languages are being taught in my schools? What's available? Where can my people learn language or be certified for languages? And then we have the Global Seal, the language credential that can be available anywhere. And these can also provide together some cool, interesting community solutions for you. So let's look at that. If we look at your linguistic assets, we talked about what languages were, that were spoken at home. This also shows ethnic diversity. So if we look at your state, the more blue it is, the more ethnically diverse and most likely linguistically diverse your state is. In other words, there's likely to be more languages spoken. And so that also provides you with an idea if that's an opportunity for you to pursue. That also might mean you'll be easier to find linguistically diverse employees. And when we live in those diverse sort of communities, we also find that there's translation needs. And some of these images may be things that you've seen or heard of or read about or seen on your local news station, whether it's legal or in the medical situation, filling out school paperwork, in police and law enforcement. Those are all issues that face diverse communities, especially when there are numbers of emerging English language learners in those communities, that there are language barriers. With the past few months of COVID-19, we've seen lots of cases where the language barrier has been a huge issue to solving some of these problems. And according to the research, and this comes from a large study that was commissioned by the Ipsos Public Affairs of 1,200 U.S. employers. They interviewed 1,200 employers of different size companies. That these are some of the stats that really came out about what they are saying about language and the impact on their business. That 9 out of 10 rely on employees with languages other than English. It may not be intentional or planned, but it happens. 56% said that language demand will increase. But the one that really struck me was that 1 in 4 said they lost business due to a lack of language skills. We also see language needs are in some unusual places. For example, where there was a lot of reliance on language was in construction. Certainly, we expect it in the healthcare and social assistance communities, but it was also in professional and technical services as well. And so these are all areas where if you are in one of these kinds of business communities or industries, that this might be a space where you might want to think about adopting in your program a Global Seal of Biliteracy. Especially if you are in client-facing needs. The top 5 departments that needed languages were customer service, sales, marketing, management, and surprisingly, IT. People who couldn't figure out how to use their mobile device, perhaps, or their cable services. And these have become then other ways we can look at your community. You can look at your community or your state as economic assets. For example, do you know within your community or your state who your international trade partners are? Because they represent language needs as well. So for example, I'm in the state of Illinois, our largest trade partner happens to be Canada. Our second largest trade partner has been in the past Mexico, and third is China. And so when we start to look at these lists, that also gives you an indication about what languages might be important for my community to learn, or what might be an opportunity for my business to expand to. And we can begin to look at the top 15 US trade partners and what languages are spoken as we begin to explore what languages could a dual language school in our community support. And so these are all ways to look at languages and how we might think about language within our own business and our communities. You can also look at tourism dollars if you're in an area that attracts tourists. Who are the tourists that come to your community? So I pulled out a couple of states here, Hawaii and California. And in Hawaii, we see that a number of their tourists actually come from Asia. That's not too surprising. But it's a huge number of dollars. About 44% of the tourists to Hawaii, almost half, are actually international tourists. When we look at California, international tourists, 18.1 million of them spend $28.3 billion a year. That's a huge amount, but it's actually the largest numbers are actually from Mexico and Canada, our North American neighbors. And so when we begin to look at that, that also helps you think about, if we have 8 million neighbors, 8 million visitors from a particular country, maybe we should consider bilingual signage to better serve those people, and maybe they'll spend even more. So those are all things to be thinking about. Another thing that you might think about are your educational assets. I mentioned Hawaii earlier. In Hawaii, international students make up a huge amount of their population. Well, that's kind of hard to understand. Why would anyone want to go to Hawaii for university? But it brings into the Hawaiian economy $301 million a year. In my state of Illinois, it's 1.9 billion. International students contribute 25,000 Illinois jobs. So again, if I'm looking at those kinds of things, who are those students? Where do they come from? What kinds of foods from home might I stock in my grocery store that they would be thrilled to have? Or what kind of restaurant might I want to open? Or what kind of books should I stock in my bookstore or newspapers because they would like to read those things? So those are all kinds of things to start to thinking about when you're looking at language. Or if they're in my community, what business could I begin to expand in their market by having them as an employee while they're living here and working and going to school? And so the idea of this report is to think about your needs analysis, what's going on in your community. Can you conduct some language testing and assessment? Yes, you can. You can do that in-house, or you could have it done outside as well. And could languages be a part of your focus in your recruitment process? Can you train candidates that you already have and help them their language level up? Maybe you have someone who is bilingual but not yet biliterate in another language. And can you identify maybe a pipeline of candidates who would like to learn a language or who have dabbled and are interested but would really appreciate some support and maybe a language coursework? And we have some sessions here at Global C.R.E.D on that topic. So conduct your need analysis. Think about what would be supportive of your community or your business or your markets. Consider the language needs of your particular community. Maybe work with your local schools, community colleges, universities, or even high schools. Think about bilingual signage in your workforce, in your workplace, whether it's safety signage or health or welcoming signage. Who do you want to welcome to your community? Who are those international tourists or students or trade partners? All of those things begin to relate to languages. In other words, how can you say hello? I was in Hawaii recently and really impressed by the international signage that they were taking advantage of welcoming international tourists. So I thought about that concept. How would you say aloha for your particular organization? What would welcome someone into your community or into your business? And how would you identify your own cultural navigators, those people who could help you become sort of those certified interpreters, those people who um, might require, might better serve you and your community because they're already there. And then thinking about what kinds of organizational resources that you might want to invest, whether it's identifying your employees, offering pay differentials, providing language services, thinking about in-house language training or testing for your employees, in thinking about the Global Seal of Biliteracy, offer language testing and credentials to employees who are interested. We offer tests in over 100 different languages, and testing is much less expensive than you might imagine for the payoffs that it can offer your company or your organization. And so to learn more and to find our tests in the languages that you've identified as being valuable, our website has under the globalseal.com /languages. You'll find a language. You can click on that language and it will take you to a website listing all of the different languages available. So what do proficiency tests measure? What the person understands in listening, as well as in reading comprehension, and what the person can do in the language. What can they create on their own? These are open-ended prompts. These aren't multiple choice or fill-in-the-blank sentences. They are actual and open prompt where they're going to write it what they can, a paragraph or a few sentences or maybe an essay or an email. They're going to try to have a conversation or give a nice little presentation topic on a question. So the idea is, how much can you say, how thoroughly, what quality of language can you use? And of course, accuracy is important, but getting your message across and getting the job done is even more important. And these are, again, all currently based on the ACTFL scale we talked about earlier, but beginning in 2021, we will be also at the Global Seal accepting and some qualified CEFR Council of Europe tests as well. So when someone who takes a test gets their test scores back, that feedback's really important because it's going to give them a score in each of those skill areas. The average person does not score the same in every category. If I'm shy, I might do better in writing than in speaking. If I'm have a Spanish-speaking grandmother, I might do very well in the listening, and maybe not as well in the speaking if I haven't had that much practice. But it's good feedback, and these 4 test scores oftentimes provide not just diagnostics of what you did on the test itself, but also suggestions for how to improve and how to, again, level up, how to do better the next time. And if I'm a company person, I can begin to look at a group report if I'm the administrator of the test and begin to see those sort of trends and begin to kind of chart where people are and then perhaps provide some training or some coaching for them to be able to improve. Because what we see in this particular group test is that everyone qualified at the functional fluency level on this particular test. Some people even qualified at the working fluency in some areas, but not all. And there are even some who qualified in a few areas at the professional fluency. We all have our strengths and our weaknesses. And the gamification happens when I see myself in some areas at the next level, and then I just want to work a little bit harder to pull up those weak scores. And so after I have those test results, it's time to get that language certificate, to get those credentials. They are the credentials itself with a global seal are simple to get, and they are free. Your testing is something you contract with the testing company, but we are completely free as an organization to certify those test results. So you go to theglobalseal.com, you click on the Apply tab, and an individual may apply for himself or herself, or an organization may apply for an individual or for a group, and you may apply before or after testing. Step 3, administer the tests and submit the copies of the original scores to the Global Seal. And then step 4, receive the candidate's Global Seal certificates. Again, they're sent to you for free, including the embossed seals. And that's it. So whoever you are, if you're bilingual, it's time to get your CR.E.D. Document your skills with language credentials and see where it will take your business or your organization. Thank you.